Not your average tabletop. Woohoo!
Welcome to Not Your Average Tabletop. I'm Zach,
And I'm Pepper.
and today we're giving our first impressions of Crown of Ash. Although Pepper maybe has played this two-handed several million times, so he might just do a chippy. We'll have to
Bi
find out.
billion times. Yes, this one is this is a Kickstarter that I backed, one that roped me in from our Take My Money series, where we shout out to cover crowdfunding projects and give our thoughts on them. And this one, striking cover, lured me in, and I'm like, okay, be a good game behind that cover. And it looked like a pretty approachable worker placement game where you kind of have these kind of different colored sections of this board. It's split like a pie into six slices, and each one has a corresponding action, either printed on there or with a tile. And throughout the game, you are, okay, very blurry, not even zoomed in. There we go. There we go. I guess this is the best picture. But throughout the game, you start with control, as you can see by these colored little player tokens. How zoomed in can we get? There we go. Now we're talking. So yeah, these little hexagon colored tokens are your kind of control markers, and you have these cards, which are your fighters, which give you a strength in that area. So the blue player controls this orange section here and that action tile, which the actions just give you resources. There's like three, four different types of resources. That's what they do. Whoever owns the region gets a bonus when someone uses their action. If they use their own action, they can then kind of mess around with their fighters that they have defending that area and upgrade them. But throughout the game, you can pay gold to replace these actions with new ones from a market. And when you do that, you get the resources on the new one, and then stack it on top of the existing one, increasing the value for each of the scoring rounds. So making it more points for you, but also more enticing for other players who can go to a combat spot and try to push you out of the region by playing their own fighters and trying to outmatch your value in the region with their cards. But you aren't just left with your fighters there, you also have combat cards that you can play, and we have identical decks. So throughout the game, you kind of know what people have played and what they haven't, and you're just playing one. I think it's like a 0 through 4, and then die symbol, which means roll a six-sided die, and it could be up to six value added to your combat score, which is always a fun one to play. And then, yeah, just that's kind of how these regions swap control. And at the end of the game, it usually ends up with a couple really stacked spots with high point tiles that you're really fighting for. And it gets pretty intense there in that final round.
Yeah, I would agree. Because yeah, you end up kind of seeing how many points each one becomes, and then you're kind of fighting for those specific areas. Um, but yeah, I love the idea of. And I don't know if it's in any other games. If you're watching this and you know of any games where someone kind of in a way controls a worker placement spot and that can change throughout the game. Like I know there's games like Lords of Waterdeep where you kind of buy and add like additional actions and stuff, so you kind of control that one, but it just kind of stays that way throughout the game. Let us know if there's any that have this because I find this really cool, where you're getting something whenever someone uses the action. Um, but yeah, then it brings it to another level where you can kind of swap control of said action, and that action can also change throughout the game, kind of continuously changing potentially, and yeah, just is a very interesting concept. It was just whether or not it was going to work. I was very interested in it, and I was like, we'll see if it actually works. Sometimes things kind of seem cool, but then you actually put them in and process together, and it just doesn't necessarily flow well. But yeah, with the one game that I played of it, I did think it did flow well. I liked this one actually quite a bit, although I would be interested in playing it at maybe 3 or 4, where there might be a little bit more competition for the things,
Oh, yeah.
or if this one ended up having having a bit of a scoring mechanism similar to Cusco or to Call, where you score.
Uh-huh.
And obviously, I don't know if that would work for the game. I've only played it once, so I'd have to play some more games of it, obviously. But where you'd score after your final turn,
Mm.
because it seems like, especially towards the end of the rounds, having that last player, at least in our game, having the last player kind of movement or whatever was very helpful. But maybe in more player game or a game with more players, maybe it wouldn't be that way. But especially in two, it felt like you could do something and I could respond, and you could do something and I could respond,
Yeah.
and then you didn't really have a chance to respond. So,
Yeah. Yeah, and you can the person in last can choose the player count, and I forgot to switch it because I think I wanted to go either first
oh,
or
yeah,
second. I wanted to switch it, and then I just completely forgot because I was too
that's true.
enticed by some of the cards. But there can be a little control if you are behind. You can choose
That's
the
true.
player order for the next round. So
Yeah, that's true. And then you probably realistically would have or should have chose last in the last round, or any round really. I mean, it's the
yeah,
same because you do that and you do that scoring every round, which is really kind of cool, but could become I don't know. I think the fact that you can kind of gain control of these areas and that is potentially constantly in flux helps the fact that it's not necessarily like, oh, it's a snowball effect of once you control something and keep making it more and more points, you just every round get those points. It's not guaranteed, not certain, but you'll probably be working pretty hard to continue to control them if you can.
yeah,
So in a way, it maybe is a little bit. I don't know.
yeah, yeah, and probably not the best experience because I don't think I put up that good of a fight, and I kind of fought for some areas a lot and didn't really upgrade my own to make them enticing to you. And I got whooped. I got whooped thoroughly throughout the whole game. Um, but I still had a lot of fun with this one. I've had a lot of fun with my two-handed plays of this game. I where I always win.
It's always the winner.
It's a lot closer usually, but yeah, I really like it. Like you said, that mechanism of controlling those actions is really cool. It's not like a game, like it doesn't feel like you're handing them the game with the resources they get, but it still kind of hurts when you go to someone else's spot and you give them something. And but the resources that you get on the tile are pretty good as well. I love that you get those resources when you build the tile, so you're sacrificing possibly a lot of gold for those valuable ones, but you're getting the resources immediately back. So it feels worth it that you're upgrading your places and you're getting resources. And they let you buy a card, those combat cards, or not the combat cards, the fighter cards. They just let you do one at the end of your turn. If you have the resources and you want to, you can buy one. It's not an action that you have to spend, which I think is good because there's not a lot of actions. I think you get four meeples per round. And yeah, if you're considering like, yeah, you get a combat or whatever, which isn't really like an action. Um, I mean, it is an action, but like it's not like gain resources, build something. Feels a little different, but I feel like it feels very limited on actions, and I think that might be maybe a slight negative. Just I felt like five meeples. I want one more action. I always wanted one more action in the round because I'm like, okay, if I want to buy a fighter and then use that fighter to fight, if it's a more expensive one, I'm like, okay, I need these resources, so I go get those resources. I'm like, well, I still need like one more and that type of resource, so I go get those resources. Now I bought the fighter, and then I fight with him. And I'm like, oh, I'm pretty much done with my round. I did like one thing. I did these things just to do one little combat, and I probably lost it anyway. But
Yeah,
it's
it felt about right to me, but I could see
yeah,
that. You have those times where you need a little bit more, and sometimes that's a good thing too, where it's like, I just want one more thing. I want
that's
one
true.
more thing, and yeah, but yeah, some great components. Got an unboxing of this one if you want to check that out. But yeah, I think I would some first impression, and it'd be interesting to see how it plays with more players. Uh, but I think I'd probably give this one like a 7.75 to an 8. I liked it quite a bit. I like what it's doing. It's a very unique feeling game, and really want to hear the suggestions on other games that have some sort of controlled worker placement spots. I want to hear of them below, so let us know because it's something I really do enjoy a lot in games.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm always a little higher than you. I was anticipating this one a lot. Kind of felt like my first, like, hey, here's a new game from a new designer. I'll help them out and be part of this project and get it. And it's not this big company or series everyone knows. And I was really excited about it, and it lived up to my expectation. I think I'm gonna give this one a 9. And I think it could rise up. I don't think it could fall very far, but I think it could even rise up to almost a 10, maybe even a 10. Who knows? Depending on higher player counts and just how that feels, and if I can get a win against actual other players as well. I love this one, and gives me kind of reminds me of Ankh with the combat system and having those cards and deciding when to play which ones, but it's kind of a simpler, toned down version of that, so it's not as intense and it doesn't take 30 minutes to decide the card to play, but it still gives you that in a quick version. And yeah, I really love that system, and you gain a benefit whether you win or lose. I love that in games, especially as someone who loses combat quite a bit. I definitely appreciated that mechanism. Just a lot of good, rewarding things for also a really tight game.
Hmm. Yeah, I agree 100%. It's a solid game, solid production. Goodbye, Pepper. Goodbye. Not goodbye. Goodbye. Good purchase.
But also
Yeah,
goodbye, everybody.
but it was also a little bit of goodbye, everybody. Let us know in the comments below if this one looks exciting to you, if you've backed it, what your thoughts are on the game. But otherwise, yeah, go check out our unboxing video. And as always, don't forget to keep on nibbling on our content.